Josh is here too to answer questions in the chat.
Oh, thank you. That's good. Where's Josh? Josh, you get co-host. Oh, no, just kidding. He already has co-host?
You didn't even know. But yeah.
Didn't even know. Oh, good morning. Yes, good morning and hello from wherever you
I'm
are.
I'm going to pop over the Slack channel, make sure folks have the link, but be right back.
Thank you. Appreciate that. You guys
Morning,
are going to have
Arnold.
to Yes, good morning.
Morning, everyone in the chat.
Guys and ladies. Everyone in between. I'm sorry, I have a bit of a cough this morning and for the last week, so I'm going to be doing my best today to get everything. I am probably going to be one of the most chaotic presenters that you guys have had. Thank you. I'm going to say Shashwat. I'm hoping I get the pronunciation on all of these names. But appreciate that. Going to be getting well soon. I believe it. I have faith. We're going to give it another minute or so as people are still trickling in. For everyone, did you make your PR? Drop it in the chat if you made your PR successfully. I'm sorry, I merged like, I want to say 25 or 30 of them, but when it got to about midnight last night, I was like, yeah, it's about time. So I am going to be going through and merging the rest of those as we talk today. Not today, after we talk. If you feel like I am a little too chaotic, I am very wired and ready to go. Because we're streaming. It's radical. With that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to day 3. Congratulations for everyone who made their PRs. Glad I saw a ton of people. Thank you. Thank you for working with us. Thank you for working with the program. We've seen a lot of questions come through Slack. If your question hasn't got answered, feel free to tag me, Craig, Josh, Ashwin. Any of us should be able to help, or any of the other maintainers you might find in that channel. So if you do have issues, please don't sit quietly. The best thing you can do is just raise your voice. With that, today we're going to be talking about a couple different things, or we've got 3 different people. Myself, hi, David, Senior Developer Advocate working on open source OpenSearch. We have Abby. Abby, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Abby, and I'm from the OpenSearch Dashboard team. And I joined about a year ago. Yeah.
Well, happy year. And then Craig, I think most people know Craig from the other days, but Craig is also here. And today I sit in your seats as a mentee, as I don't work on OpenSearch Core and OpenSearch Dashboards. So Craig and Abby are going to be helping me. If I click on my PowerPoint somewhere, fork and run OpenSearch. After we do that, we're going to fork and run OpenSearch Dashboards. And then as a stretch goal, we are going to try to not cry in the process. It is not that painful. However, I don't know. This is the throat thing, man. Maybe I'm just a little emotional today. So, excuse me. With that, we're going to go ahead and roll right in. And I do not have any formal instructions today. Thank you, Craig, for dropping the OpenSearch link. The reason I don't have any formal instructions is we are going to be solely using the developer guides for each of these repos. So I'm going to exit my PowerPoint here. You guys can see I worked very hard on my 2 slides. I probably should have saved that. Hindsight's 2020. And we're going to start in OpenSearch. Now, fresh reminder, if you need to fork the project, which you will for this, we are going to be forking by clicking this little fork button. And here we can see I have an existing fork already. So instead of forking again and going through that process, I'm just going to click this to go to my fork. Once I am in this fork, I am going to open this up so it's a little larger. Also, please feel free to drop in the chat. If the text isn't large enough for you, I will try my best to accommodate. And here we can see that my branch is 17 commits behind OpenSearch project main. That is my main branch. There are lots of other branches, but I am going to go ahead and sync my fork. Update branch. That is going to go and fetch all of the changes that OpenSearch project had made that I hadn't accepted yet locally on my GitHub repo. And we are going to go and find, actually, we're going to clone it first. We're going to start with cloning. So if you click the little drop down here for clone with the Git repo, you can use HTTPS or the GitHub CLI. We talked about Git workflows. My personal one uses SSH keys. Take that, and I will go into, for me, I am like weird about my organization. So not of my desktop, but everything else. So we're going to go into my development. Zoom keeps taking control of my screen. All of my forks, I actually store under my GitHub alias under development. So DTAIVPP. And CD Craig stands for
Change directory. And
change
what David just
directory.
did there too was something called tab complete, which will make your lives a lot easier too. When
Oh,
you're
yes.
doing a command like CD, you could type just the first couple characters of a folder and then press tab to complete the rest. So you don't need to
Yes.
type the whole thing out. It's huge productivity enhancement.
It really is. It allows me to move quickly. Then I would normally git clone into this directory. I don't have to because I actually already have one. But when you do this, it'll download it. And that takes about a minute or so. So I will give you guys a minute while that is happening. And while we are waiting for you to clone yours down, I'm going to go change directory again into my OpenSearch. And again, I just tapped tab, that auto-completes, and then it shows me all of the different options there. So I'm going to change directory into OpenSearch. And here we can see this is my, I have OMyZSH on as well, and it tells us we are in the dev guide branch. So that is not the branch that I want to be working off right now because I was making edits on that. So I am going to check out main. Git check out main. Huzzah. I'm now on the main branch. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to pull those changes, right? So what I did first was I synced my fork. So from the OpenSearch project, it got synced into my GitHub fork. And now I'm going to pull down those changes from my GitHub fork to my local repo. So git pull. Huzzah. And now I can see these are all the changes that have been made since I last pulled. And it's quite a lot. Wow, that's actually really impressive because I literally pulled this yesterday, 2 days ago, 3 days ago. Now that I have all the most recent changes, I'm going to create a branch. Git checkout. This is a shortcut. B will create a branch with the name and check it out at the same time. So, and this is just to make sure I don't accidentally do something I don't mean to. I could just build and run from main, but I'm going to say OSCI. Huzzah. And as we can see, we have now switched to the new branch, OSCI. We see that over here. Again, if you don't have OMyZSH, you will not see that in your terminal, but you can always check by, I think it's just git branch.
Git status should show it as well.
Oh, git
And
status.
there's an alternative way to create branches too now. This didn't exist a while ago, but it's called git switch create.
Yeah, I was going to mention
Wow.
most folks might know that if they've seen Git more recently than some of us.
I was gonna say you guys are calling me out for being old, and I don't appreciate it. But could someone tell me what does git switch create do different than what I just did?
Git switch is a little bit more specialized a command. So git checkout has lots of options, and for like the most common things of like just creating and switching to a new branch, git switch is kind of just the shorthand specialized way. I don't actually know myself, but if anyone is curious about the thing, I think this is also another great question for ChatGPT. It would probably help all of us just know the difference.
As it
but
normally does.
yeah, Git switch is kind of what you'll see in those more recent tutorials, but both work totally fine.
Cool. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code. If you installed code with extensions or your what is it? Completions, symlinks, I forget the name for this. You can just run code space period, and it will open a Visual Studio Code instance in that in that directory, which is handy. If you don't, though, you can go here, File, Open Folder, and do so that way. So let's see. Now, I have some extensions that are outdated, which is one of the wonderful things. So we're going to go through the developer guide.
Can I just briefly make a comment here, David?
Yeah.
This is a Java project, and as you work through different code bases, there may be different tools you want to use for different code bases. Visual Studio Code's a good general purpose tool, as David is using there. But you can open this up in sort of any editor just to view the developer guide. Next week, when you meet with your mentors, they might have some more repo specific pointers to help you out.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Mohammed. So today we are going to be checking out the OpenSearch repo and running it, and then checking out the dashboards repo and running that as well. So we're going to get started in the developer guide. And I'm just going to scroll all the way to the start. We have done the first step, which is forking and cloning locally. Now we have to install prerequisites. Just kidding. You know what? I am going to check out my branch because it has better stuff. Git checkout. What is it? Oh dear. Dev guide. Sorry. This is still not in the main repo. I have a pull request open for this. Oh. Maybe I have to re-render this. Because today we're going to be using an optional tool called, Craig, I'm going to ask you to name it because I don't remember off the top of my head.
SDK man to manage Java installations locally. It's a really easy way to switch between different versions of the JDK.
Wow, I do not have my SDK man things here. That is strange. That's okay though. Wait, actually, hold on. This is let's make sure it's synced. Has conflicts that must be resolved. Okay. Let me just double check that it does exist, and maybe it doesn't. Sorry. And this is what I meant by we are going to do things very raw and very live today, so hopefully no crying though. Not documentation. Dev guide. That's the one I'm looking for. Developer guide. Here it is. I don't know. That is very strange. Why is it in my remote but not here? Git pull. It says already up to date, but I do not see the changes. So we're going to use this as our guide today. And you can find this. I will post this here so that everyone has access, because we are going to use the SDK man version of our developer guide, because it makes life, while not easy, much more straightforward. Try and do this. Cool. So SDK man is a utility that helps you manage your Java environments. And basically what it does, Java can be a nightmare to install occasionally. So it's going to help us install Java and then manage all of those dependencies. So here we're going to do SDK list Java. And we can see there are several distributions of Java. For OpenSearch, we actually prefer what's called the Tamarin distribution, which is managed by Adoptium. And we are going to prefer the most recent 17.0 version. So I'm going to copy this. Oh, I didn't even show you how to install SDK man. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and paste this in so that everyone can follow along. Huzzah. So we would normally go and install SDK man. I'm actually going to do that because I should. Oops, copy. So you copy this curl script. Curl is a utility for grabbing a page or a file from a remote server, a remote place, or making requests against HTTP endpoints. This is going to grab a file from getSDKman.io, and then it's going to pipe it into bash, which basically says, hey, go grab from this site a file. It's a shell script, and then run it with bash. This little thing is called a pipe. Huzzah! I already have SDK man, so it's going to yell at me and say, hey, it's already there. Once that is completed, you can run SDK man list Java. Nope. It's just SDK, my fault. There we go. And now we can see all of the different Java versions. So we'll scroll all the way down again to Tamarin. I'm going to say that like 6 more times, Tamarin. And we are going to grab the most recent version, 17 version of this. And we're going to copy the one that says 17.08 tem, because that is the distribution that we are using. So we're using the 17.08 version of JDK, and we're going to use the Tamarin's distribution. To get out of here, if you're stuck in Vim or VI, it's :Q. We'll go back to our developer guide. And we'll do SDK install Java 17.08 tem. I'll just actually copy it from here because why not? It's going to go download that. It'll install it in the appropriate location. And then what we will do is use that version. SDK man also does a lot of other cool things, but I know none of them. Craig, do you use SDK man for anything else?
Actually, solely use it for Java development. I know there is other use cases though. I apologize about that. I don't know them off the top of my head.
That's okay. I'm just gonna keep calling you out until you know the answer to one of them. I'm just kidding. So I am gonna have it set this as the default version. You will find in the traditional guide, it mentions JDK 11, JDK 14, JDK 17. So 14 and 11 are built for compatibility. We don't need to install those today. We do not need compatibility on all of our tests. That's managed by the build pipeline. And if someone calls that out to you, they'll help you work through that.
And along with that, David, any new code you write would need to be compatible with the least recent version of Java that's publicly stated that it's okay to run with.
Yes.
So
yes.
for instance, Java 7, you cannot run OpenSearch with Java 7.
No, you cannot. Yeah, so these 3 are the currently supported. We're moving to 21 because it's a long-term support version. 21 was just released though, so Tamarin hasn't updated their artifacts. So that is why we are not doing that today. So we have now installed it. We have set Tamarin as Java 17 as our default. And now we're going to tell SDK man to use it. The dev guide, I'm going to send you the link to the dev. Oh, Craig's already on it. Thank you, Craig. You're so fast. So helpful. So SDK use Java 17 is basically saying that after we've installed it, we want to use this version in the shell. Now, as Craig mentioned, we support backwards support for several different distributions of Java. So you can swap this out for Java 11, and your code should run on Java 11 as well as in 17 and 14, even though 14 wasn't a long-term support version. You might have trouble finding distribution for 14. I was told that it's maintained because we supported it at one point, and we will eventually be dropping support for that. So now I can check with Java Tech version, I believe. Yes, here we go. We can see the Java version that is currently running in our shell. It's 1708, and it is Tamarin. Now we will go past all of these different sections because we're not going to install, we're not going to do all of the runtime testing. We're going to go to the build section now. And we are going to run Gradle W assemble.
So that'll
Craig,
build all distributions, David. So
just
this
kidding.
command is actually going to fail if you don't have Docker installed and running. So what that would build distributions for Linux and Windows and I believe Mac and other environments. So the one afterwards, local distribution, will build a distribution for your local platform that you're using, whether you're using a Windows computer, a Mac, or a Linux machine.
This is why we have Craig on the call, guys, and girls and everyone in between. So great point. That would have taken forever. So we're going to run local distro, which distro. I say distro all the time, and Kyle Davis would take my hat off. So we're going to install this locally, and that's going to bundle it, compile it for our local. You should be able to do this on code spaces. Yes. That will compile it for Linux because most code spaces are built on some Linux operating system. I think Ubuntu might be the default, or maybe it's Alpine. Don't remember that off the top of my head, but so this will build it locally. And then once it has finished building, then we can go and run it. We are going to build and run. There is optionally another way you can just run it. And is that Gradle W run?
Yes, that's right, David.
Wow. Look
So
at me.
if you
I'm
make
like
a
an
change
engineer.
and don't want to, assemble all of the jars as David is doing now with local distro, you can use Gradle run and it'll start up an OpenSearch node. You can,
And run it locally.
you can set up, like in many IDEs, you can usually set up a run configuration and start it directly in your development environment as well.
Yes. Now the output of this is where it has been installed to. So this creates a physical file that we can go to. I'm going to open a new terminal here. By the way, this allows you to create new terminals, and then you can have them listed off to the side. So we're going to cd into that. Nope. Thought I copied it, and I didn't. Cd into this directory that it had specified above. And now we can see we have our OpenSearch 3 snapshot. Now, when you're working off main, this is technically our 3.0 branch. We track all of our updates on main, and you can work out of different branches for when you are doing OpenSearch development. And Craig, do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So the way a lot of open source projects are versioned is sort of through branches. So on our main branch, it's unreleased code, and the next major version is 3.0. So official release of OpenSearch 3.0 has not been done just yet. The latest released version is 2.9, and 2.10 is going to be released imminently. So for that, we have a branching strategy where if you, and as David's showing there, when you go onto the repository, top left on GitHub, you'll see this branches dropdown. You'll see branches for the various different versions. Now, sometimes you'll see a branch name like 2.9 or 2.10. That will be the release branch for that version. But then there's also X branches, 2.x, 1.x. Those are unreleased code on that major version. So you can talk more specifically with your mentors next week, just a little overview for what that means exactly with the branching strategy. And then snapshot, you see there's that snapshot name in what David had built locally.
Oh,
When you're
yes,
on
here we go.
main, open source projects are very high velocity. You have changes merging in all of the time. And so a snapshot is sort of a point in time view of what the code is at that particular point in time, a snapshot. It's not an official release. It's not like a frozen, like this commit is the 2.10 release. It's a snapshot of the latest changes that are still unreleased. So that's sort of what the snapshot means there.
Thank you. And this is a directory, so we can cd into OpenSearch snapshot. And here we can see all of the wonderful files that come with ours. Bin is for binary. I'm just going to steal the words Craig was telling me yesterday. Although I did know that before. I'll say that. Bin is where our binary files go. So we could do ls for bin, and we can view all the files that live in our bin. We have an OpenSearch file, key stores, node, CLI. So these are some of the binary files that live in there. We have a configuration that can run. Craig, is this just for the local config for this node?
So that is where the
so.
OpenSearch.yaml file will live. And you might read about that file in a lot of different projects. That's where your configuration lives for that node.
Yep. We can actually, let's just cat that out. So cat will dump the contents of that file into the terminal. Words that escape me. So config OpenSearch YAML. And this just shows, wow, all of the configuration settings that you can have for OpenSearch. We are not going to dive into that. That is just fun to poke at if you want to. Craig, could you tell me again, is it just running the OpenSearch or OpenSearch node with in the binary to get the node running?
So all of those are executable files there, but to actually start the OpenSearch process, you would use /bin/OpenSearch.
Yeah, thank you. /bin and OpenSearch. And that is running our 3.0 snapshot, which is all the changes we have just fetched from main locally, and it is going to jump a ton of text. These are all logs. These are the logs for OpenSearch getting up and starting. These you won't normally be like sitting and watching as your OpenSearch nodes come up in like a production environment. However, these are handy for us to see here. With that, how many people have made it this far? Could we put in the chat if you need just another minute or so you want to get to this point in time? Yeah, so there is no mechanism to get the logs. When you run OpenSearch, it will do the logs for you. So .bin/OpenSearch will start. Oh, we got to the point of using the SDK man and a little behind. The meeting is recorded and it will be shared. Do we want to take just like 3 or 4 minutes for people to get up to speed again, or do we want to keep going?
I think you can take a couple minutes because we're not at half an hour yet, and hopefully the dashboards one doesn't take any longer than OpenSearch. So yeah, I think people can have a couple more minutes.
Yes.
Maybe if you want to just kind of rewind and go back to, if folks have the SDK, just walk back through those steps again.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm going to do that because I just noticed someone saying they're doing Gradle W assemble, and I'm sorry, that is my fault. I told you to assemble, but we are not assembling. So we'll start back at the top here. I'm again really baffled at why my branch. I'm on dev guide. I've got this is definitely at the developer guide. Why that my changes are in my remote but not here, I will not know. Oh, there they are. They're just not in the preview. That is really funny. Who wants to go open a bug on Look at this. Optional SDK man after install prerequisites. It's not there. Someone can go open a bug on Visual Studio Code because that's hilarious. Well, I feel a little bit better now. So SDK man install, here is the link for that. What we did was we went and installed SDK man, and after that we did SDK list Java. So that's going to list all of the Java versions that are available through SDK man once you've installed it. And we wanted the Tamarin version. So we scrolled down, found the 1708 that says tem at the end. And we copied that. Then we used SDK man to install Java version 1708 from Tamarin. After we install it, that's going to take a second to download. Oh, zoom in. Yes, for sure. Let me pull this out of the way. There we go. Grab all this. There we go. So after we install Java, the Tamarin distribution, we're going to go ahead and use Java. And that is going to say basically, hey, set my Java _ home for this shell to use Java 1708 Tamarin. And it will point to that distribution. Sometimes if you download SDK man, you might have to close out of your terminal and reopen to get that environment variable refreshed. Depending on what terminal you're on, ZS, I think it gets installed automatically with ZSH. There's a tip to get that sourced. But closing and reopening your shell should allow you to get into there. So again, SDK use Java basically sets this Java home environment variable so that when we run stuff in our shell, it knows which Java to use. Actually, and that's a fun tip, which Java will tell you which version of Java you're using on macOS and Linux type distributions. Actually, does which come on macOS by default?
Yes. But the command I would run to show what my Java home is echo Java home. Java home is an environment variable set. So you use a $sign in Mac and Linux. I believe you use percentages on Windows. But this would show you which Java installation you're currently using.
That is a good call out because Java might be symlinked differently. So for Windows, it's, what is it, %% echo %%. If you're using Windows now and you know this off the top of your head, please drop it in the chat for all others to enjoy. Awesome. So once we have set our SDK man to use that Java version, we're going to skip all the Java 14, 17, custom JDKs. On Windows, there is this additional step to set Java options. This XMX basically allows Java to use 4 GB of memory from your computer. The last command I entered, I did the last command in a different window just because I wanted to be able to still make use of this terminal, but you can do that different ways. You can just run it all in one shell. Next, I originally said Gradle assemble, but that's where I was corrected by Craig. We do not want to assemble because that is going to try and install every single distribution or build every single distribution of OpenSearch. And we only need to run it in our local distribution, which is Gradle W local distro. That will build and install OpenSearch into a location on your computer, which it will tell you. It'll say the OpenSearch distribution installed to. Here we can see my wonderful file tree path. Users, DTIP, development. Oh, it's actually right here. Why did I not? I did not know that. Lives in the build directory. what is that? Distribution. And there it is. OpenSearch 3 snapshot. Then we can change directory into this location. CD, paste. And that's where we can list all of our different snapshots. So right now we only have one snapshot. You might generate a few more. Craig, do you know if it overwrites the last snapshot?
Yes.
Awesome.
So if you made any
So-
changes and then want those changes reflected, you would do the command to build a local distribution. And
Yes.
then you can start again. Yeah.
Yep. And that is actually a huge pinch point that I know a lot of people have dealt with, myself included. I will create changes, save my files, and then expect the changes to be there because I forgot to build and my changes were not reflected. So you have to build after you save and make changes.
Yeah, and we're going to be doing OpenSearch dashboards in just a second. For there is hot reloading.
Yes.
So it doesn't involve compilation when you make changes the way that a Java application would.
Yep. And then the last thing that we had done is once we were here, we changed directory into our OpenSearch snapshot. And from here, we ran .bin/OpenSearch. And what that command does is that runs this instance of OpenSearch that we just generated. And huzzah, OpenSearch is up. We can now check that it's up. I can, oh gosh, curl host :9200. So this is currently running on localhost, which is locally on our computer. It's not out to the internet. It's running on port 9200. It is, hold on, I'm going to remember this, Craig. Don't tell me yet. Cat health? Is it _ cat health?
No underscore with the health.
So close. And curl, again, is just a utility to hit the OpenSearch endpoint cat health, which tells us the health of our OpenSearch cluster. And here we have OpenSearch cluster that is green, which is great. That means it is all healthy. Right. With that, for time, I am going to switch over and we're going to start doing dashboards. Abby, I apologize. I went through your Docker guide and it took 30 minutes to build. So we're gonna do it locally and then we'll paste the link. So Abby has created a phenomenal developer guide that allows you to run OpenSearch dashboards in a Docker container. I am not going to be doing that today because it takes a little bit longer to build, but it is a much more straightforward setup. So Abby, I will paste that in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this though.
Yeah, and I think this may be common for some of the other repos too. There's often multiple ways of doing something, and so folks that are familiar with Docker will love this. But if you've never used Docker before and it's like one more confusing thing, that might also make it harder. So if you're in a repo like Dashboards where there's multiple ways of doing it and you're struggling with one of the ways, also just chat with your mentor and see if there's an alternative that may work for you.
Yeah. One moment. All right. What we are going to do now, again, is we are going to fork the repo. Fork, and then this will run you through a workflow for forking this. I already have one, so I am going to go ahead and click on my fork that already exists. And like many people, I just name my fork the same thing as it's originally named, just helps me getting back and finding it easier. Yeah, so question was in the chat, do we need to fork dashboards even if we are not going to work on it? It is actually really good to be able to know how to run OpenSearch and dashboards because whatever you're doing, you're going to at some point need to test what you are working on. And everything we're working on at some point is going to probably interact with either OpenSearch or OpenSearch dashboards. So highly recommended. But again, at your own discretion. So again, I'm going to go ahead and sync my fork. We will update this branch because I am 3 commits behind. It said it's fetched and fast forwarded. I'm gonna refresh this so we'll see that. Huzzah, we're up to date. And this is where you will go again, code. You can clone it with HTTPS, SSH, GitHub CLI. I'm going to use SSH because that is what I'm familiar with. We'll pull up my terminal. Now, I am still in the OpenSearch repo, so I'm going to cd space ... That says go up a level. And now I'm going to git clone and my OpenSearch Dashboards fork. So again, this is the one under my username and then OpenSearch Dashboards.git. And this is going to take a hot minute. So I'm going to just pause here. We're going to wait for that to finish completing for several. Are there any questions that we can answer in the meantime?
And I did just want to say too, this meeting is being recorded and the recording will be distributed. So if you are falling a bit behind, don't worry, you can watch the video to look at the steps again, asynchronously.
Yeah.
But for the sake of time, we want to move forward to dashboards.
Yep. Okay. So we will change directory then into OpenSearch Dashboards. And here I also have a branch dev guide. I was making changes to the dev guide for these actually today, but only some of my changes have made it in and only some of the changes are complete. So we're going to do git pull. Oh, sorry, git checkout main. Once it is downloaded, you've CD'd into the OpenSearch dashboards, it should be on main and you shouldn't have to do this pull step. But because I did not just get a fresh copy, I do have to get pulled my the most recent changes. There we go. These are the changes that have been made since I last got them. Now we are going to go back and follow our developer guide, which I can do code dot to open up a instance of Visual Studio Code in my dashboards repo. And again, if you do it a different way, if you open code, you can just go File, Open Folder, and then navigate to your OpenSearch Dashboards folder. Pull this. So we don't have to use my version of the developer guide. Craig had just posted, I think I saw the link to the dashboard, so you can use just the website version if you'd like by going down and doing developerguide.md. Now I will go back into code. Also, I love how this bar at the top as well gets larger as I zoom in, but the icons don't, which is a little funny. Now we're going to go ahead and do getting started. So OpenSearch Dashboards is a Node.js web application. What that means is it runs using the Node.js, I guess it's a runtime because it's not compiled. So with the Java app, we compiled it. It boiled itself down into a single binary file. This will run in a runtime environment called Node.js. Then we will go, we have a GitHub account. We have already installed Git. We have it locally. We do need Node.js, NPM, and Yarn. Node can be installed using the install guide here. We recommend using NVM. This is Node Version Manager, and what it does is it helps you manage different installs of Node. So a really great example of when you might use something like this is Maybe your application runs on Node version, 39, and you want to see if it can be upgraded to 40. You can use Node Version Manager to switch those. So we're not going to go and do this as I've already done it. However, the command is here. It is very similar to the SDK man install, where it curls a file and then pipes that into bash to install it.
Yeah,
And again,
I was going to
go
say,
ahead.
if folks haven't used version managers like this, it's pretty common across languages. You'll often find that different projects have different requirements, and so things like this make it really easy to kind of work on multiple projects at the same time, even if they have different Node requirements or Java requirements. So I think even if you're working on like one of the Ruby repos or Python, you would also, it's very common to use a version manager to help keep that straight across projects.
Yeah. And there are lots of them for lots of different ones. For example, Python, I think, has like 5 or 7 different version managers. So it's joyful. However, we do tell you the ones we recommend. I would recommend sticking to the ones recommended within the repos, just because there are build scripts and things along those lines that kind of depend on that. Next, we can install Yarn. I have npm IG Yarn, and this works. We actually have a new version of this coming out that is installing Yarn with Core Pack. I am not going to show you that today because I feel like that would be confusing, considering this works and is already in there. Josh, did you remember why Core Pack is used, or is it just a npm thing?
So Yarn, I mean, as npm and Yarn have evolved, Yarn used to be kind of separate, and now it's integrated into this new Core Pack, which is the new way of modern way of installing things. So yeah, this one way should still work, but I think that change the developer guide will probably go out this week. So depending if you're doing this live with us today, npm install global Yarn should be just fine. If you're looking at this guide from the video 2 days from now, you might see different instructions to use Core Pack. The goal is the same, just to have Yarn up and running.
Exactly.
And actually, to tie this back to earlier, using SDK-Man, SDK-Man is a version manager too, where you can switch between different Java installations. I want to test with Java 11. I want to test with Java 17. You can switch between them. So NVM and SDK-Man are effectively doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's a really great call out.
And then Yarn, just in case people aren't familiar with Yarn, it's a package manager. So this is what really is responsible for managing all the dependencies, making sure that when you're running the project locally, you're running with all the same versions of the dependencies that everyone else is. So what these steps are just like one-time setup. Once you have Yarn installed and npm installed and Node through NVM, generally you don't have to change those very often.
Exactly. One key call out here is we have this will install Yarn 1.22.19 locally. We currently only support the 1x line of Yarn. There is up to version 3. So if you work on OpenSearch dashboards, you can help modernize this with our package manager. That would be phenomenal. But I think that actually is a npm thing. I think npm officially supports that, so maybe it would be a bigger change. But I digress. So let's see. Yeah. Sorry, Mohammed. So Mohammed asked a really great question. So OpenSearch is built on Java. We have flipped from Java and we are now living in JavaScript land. So OpenSearch's build is going to be very different from OpenSearch Dashboards. OpenSearch Dashboards is built on Node, which is, here, we're going to try and use all the words. OpenSearch Dashboards runs on the Node.js runtime, which is a JavaScript runtime. We manage our versions of NPM with NVM. And NPM is a package manager that we use to install Yarn, which is yet another resource negotiator. It's a little bit nested, but follow the guide to a T, and you will eventually end up in the right location. That is my recommendation at the moment. So after we've installed Yarn, let's see, we can bootstrap OpenSearch don't click things, David. We can bootstrap OpenSearch dashboards. And what bootstrapping is essentially it's your first time run, setup, and install. So we have changed into the OpenSearch dashboards because we had already cloned it. We installed our Yarn. We have installed Node and, yes, Node, which comes with NVM. And now we can, I'm going to say simply run. I know it's not been a simple process to get there. Yarn OSD bootstrap.
There was a good question in the chat. I just want to point out too. Ryu just said, do we need to run OpenSearch and OpenSearch dashboards together to test it out? David, do you want to answer that question?
I'm going to say yes. I actually don't know the official answer to this question because dashboards itself will run. However, it will not let you into dashboards unless it is connected on the back end to an instance of OpenSearch.
Yeah, so just to clarify also, OpenSearch can run completely on its own, right? You can just interact through it via curl, as David did. OpenSearch dashboards, as of today, requires a connection to OpenSearch. So yeah, technically it runs, but in a broken state. Like it will set up a port and you can connect to it, but it doesn't do anything. The interesting thing is there's plans to make that not true in the future. But today, you'll have to have a running version of OpenSearch to connect to successfully start up dashboards.
Yeah. You can think of it as sort of front end and back ends. So you can have a front end, but if you don't have the API serving requests, then it's sort of it's a no-op, meaning it doesn't function. You can't log in or do any operations in the dashboard.
Yep. So after we've done Yarn OSD Bootstrap, this is going to install a whole bunch of stuff. Actually, Abby or Josh, do you want to talk about what Yarn OSD Bootstrap does?
I don't want to get into it too much here, actually.
Okay.
Not only does it, so it does the normal thing that you might expect, which is pull down all of the dependencies that are defined. So there's a lot of, we talked before in the open source session of all the other technologies and dependencies were built on top of. So it will pull the latest of those and we'll install those. It also does something else, which is if you had any plugins set up, it would also make sure to gather all of those plugin dependencies, make sure they're all cross-compatible, and pull all those too. So in addition to the kind of the normal, if you're familiar with Node ecosystem or JavaScript projects, in addition to doing all the normal dependency setup, it's also doing all of the setup for any plugins that are installed as well. Right now, David is running this just the basic core dashboards. So there are not any external plugins, but it will also like the package management and dashboards is actually kind of complex. So I won't say any more about it now. If you end up working on dashboards with us, you'll get to learn a lot more about that. But yeah, it's complex.
Yeah, that's for sure. And someone else just asked in the chat, how do OpenSearch and dashboards get connected? And we will actually go ahead and run OpenSearch dashboards. So we already have OpenSearch running, right? I left that running in the previous environment that I have closed and put somewhere. There it is. So OpenSearch here is still running in the background. And we had told OpenSearch that it should run on this IP address, which is a local one, port 9200. So every time, or when we start up dashboards, because this is a demo version, it is actually going to do, let's see, I'm just going to yarn start. What it's going to do is it's going to spin up dashboards, and there is a configuration file that says, hey, dashboards, you should look for OpenSearch at this location. So it will look for it at that local IP address, port 9200, because it knows that is the place to do that. So that is how they connect. Basically, dashboards will start up and it will attempt to make it a connection. If you change the port of OpenSearch, then it will not connect. You would have to change the configuration here, which, is there an OpenSearch config file here, Josh, that
Yeah, under the config directory.
there we go. There we go. So this is where you could make changes to tell them, here we go. We've said, hey, look, oh, geez.
You could
Wow,
also,
okay.
you can also, I think from the CLI, when you say yarn start, you could specify a port for the server host as well.
That's awesome. Yep. And this also specifies where OpenSearch dashboards should listen to, but these are commented, so it's not using these. It's just using the defaults. Now we can see it has a server for dashboards, which is now listening on localhost 5603 Jin. It automatically creates a link as well. I want to point this out. It creates a link, and that link has a, what is this, a proxy? Is that the appropriate?
I forget the term. It's just a way to make sure when you're developing locally that you don't have stale cache objects. And so you can actually run this without the, yeah.
Okay, very cool.
But yeah, by default, it will add that 3-letter prefix suffix will change every time you start dashboards.
Yes,
so and it's also just to make sure that there's no stale cache items.
Yep. And you can actually command and click this if you're on Mac OS, and that will just open it in your default browser. For me is Firefox. And we are in OpenSearch Dashboards. So we're going to go ahead and add some exploratory data, which is cool. We have just this ability to add it on the fly. We have some sample flight data, which I am going to pick because I'm going on a flight here soon, and I want to know if my flight's going to be on time. Just kidding. This is just sample data, so this will tell me no information about my actual flight. However, we can click the View Data button. If you missed that, I click very fast, and I'm very sorry about that. So we did flight data, install, and then view data. And this is an example of OpenSearch dashboards. So what that install data button did on the back end was it went and it created a fake data set. It sent that into OpenSearch because OpenSearch is our database backend. And it is then visualizing that data that has been installed here. So we can see, oh no, just delays and cancellations. Oh, that's terrible. And these, I actually haven't viewed this dashboard in some time. Are these anomalies? Or are these just marker notifications?
They are just annotations.
Okay, okay. There are lots of different ways to visualize data in OpenSearch, which, oh geez. I'm sorry, I just read someone crashed WSL because they didn't have enough storage to clone dashboards. I feel that on a very personal level. I've, in particular, if you get assigned to one of the groups that I'm mentoring, we do a lot with larger data sets. So that is a big challenge. But here we go. We'll just scroll through. These are some of the visualizations that dashboards comes with out of the box. We have, for example, line graphs, bubble charts that could be overlaid, single items. You can do aggregations. We've got stacked bar charts. I always forget a geograph. Wow, look at that. That's really neat.
You may also just want to show, because we had the question of, like if someone was just developing on OpenSearch, would they ever use dashboards? I would say the two, like the visualizations on dashboards are cool. But if you were mostly working on the backend system, you might be more interested in either the DevTools console or Discover as a way to view the raw documents.
Yeah, that's actually a really good call out. So DevTools is a really great way to be able to make do interaction. All right. That was funny. To interact with OpenSearch. So before we did curl, let's see, local, oh, hold on. Sorry, getting another meeting invite. Local host colon 9200 /cat / health. And this is how we ran it. Here, we could just do get, because it's a get request on _ cat, we get some auto completion / health.
Yeah, so one advantage here is the auto completion of the OpenSearch API, so that David would not have had to remember what the exact health command was. And in fact, also, if you click the little wrench, it will also link you to any like specific documentation. So that open documentation will actually, generally, as long as we have documentation for that API call, will also just take you directly to like the real documentation for that endpoint.
I'm sitting a little bit quietly in shock because I've used OpenSearch for a long time and I've never known that. I've never clicked that button. And this is one of the wonderful things and why we do things like this, where we're on the phone call with several different people, because you guys will not in 10 weeks know all there is to know about OpenSearch. However, you will know a lot about your specific areas. And that is one of the phenomenal things is we can take a look at what's in OpenSearch here and yeah, learn from other engineers who are doing different things. So what we're doing right now, though, Mohammed, to answer your question, is we are just using OpenSearch's API. So Dashboards is up and running. And as a result, we can do cool things like we could post, let's see. Oh, we're gonna play a game here because there is not auto completions for what I'm about to do. Underscore is it underscore plugins /ml /connectors.
David, you have a vanilla installation with no plugins.
Oh, Craig, you're killing me. Well, that's okay. We can do things like get so let's see, underscore cat.
Can we create an index and index a document?
You know what? Fine, Craig, we'll do it your way. We'll do fun things there. Yeah, let's do that. I'm gonna post. I'm gonna try and remember this off the top of my head because I don't normally do this live. Post OSCI. Nope. Should I just, I'm going to bulk it. Can I bulk?
Well, if the index doesn't exist. So
okay.
Put would be the verb to create the index. So those on the left there, what you see, get, put, post, those are HTTP verbs. In day one, we talked about there's this sort of, the way you query OpenSearch is via HTTP requests.
Yep. So now OSCI does that, hey, it creates an, I am so spoiled because normally I use our Python client library. So thank you, Craig. Now that we have,
yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, you go.
So OpenSearch is a document store. And documents are organized into indexes or indices. You'll actually see both terminologies, indexes, plural, or indices. I'm actually not sure if there's a preferred way to spell it out.
Actually, I think we prefer indices. I just saw that recently in one of our guides, but whatever that means, I don't know. But yeah, that's a fair point. And here we've got our index that creates, oh, well, it says index here, but when we talk about it, it said indices. So with these indexes, there are lots of different settings. By default, OpenSearch will just accept what information that you send it. Let me show an example of this. So here we will go ahead and put OSCI doc this is the wonderful thing about OpenSearch being a NoSQL database. And what that means is there is no structure or schema. There is structure, but it is built on the fly. So for example, I can put a document in here that is test. And test is going to be a text document that said, this is some test text. Do I need, I think, underscore ID? Or actually, here, let me do it this way because I think
You
this
could
is
put
how
that
you-
in the URL, yeah.
Yeah. Gonna try and not branch out and do too many things at the same time that I don't know. ID equal to 1. Incorrect.
So it'd be the
Not
path
post.
parameter there. Yeah.
Post. That's 1. Next, ID. Did you mean ID?
Slash and then the ID. So underscore doc /1 for ID number 1.
Ah, okay. So we will do that. All right, here we go. So we're going to post to that OSCI index that we created, or yeah, I guess you kind of have to say index. Like indices sounds incorrect there. So maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe I was reading
I think
something
it's
wrong.
index and indices. So instead
Yeah.
of index and indexes, yeah.
There we go. That's probably what I was reading. So we're going to put in the OSCI index a document. This document, these are actions generally that follow after the index name. And then that document is going to have the ID of 1. And it has a key test and a value of this is some test text. So we will go ahead and huzzah, we've created that. Now we could do get to get that document, OSCI /_ doc /1. And this will show us exactly our document. Here we found that the source is, this is some test text. It's in the index OSCI. Its underscore ID is 1. It has some other information here. We're not going to dive too deep into that. This is not why people use OpenSearch though. So let's go ahead and we're going to create a few. I'm not going to try and do bulk off the top of my head. So we're going to create a few more docs. I really like dogs. Dogs. Huzzah. That is our document 2 now. Let's do, I'm more of a cat person. And this is why people actually use OpenSearch, because what OpenSearch does is it takes and it breaks all of these down into what are called reverse indices. And those reverse indices are basically a way of looking at text. So if I was to look at this reverse, oops, that was doc 2, just kidding, doc 3.
Well, so you updated the previous document, so you might want to rerun the I really like dogs too.
Yeah, I just reran that one. So that should, yeah, and we're already on version 3 of that. Nice, dude. So what OpenSearch does though, is it basically stores or creates a table, and that table will have the word I, it'll have the word this, it'll have the word is, it'll have the word some, and it will actually store a reference back to these documents here. So I might exist in, let's see, it exists in this one. I would actually get broken into I am, because OpenSearch understands language. So I is in doc 1 and doc 3. This is in doc 1. Is in doc 1. And some is in doc 1. So it would create an entry in every single word that it's ever seen, and with references back to those documents. And what it does is when you go and do, let's get OSCI / search, where are, oh gosh, query, oh, Q, that's what I'm looking for, Q equals 2. I can now send it a query and say, dogs. Boop. And it will go and it'll check and say, hey, you know, I noticed dogs exists here, and there's only one document that references dogs, and that's document 2. And it returns us document 2. Now, this by itself isn't the coolest part. The cool part comes with when you have like phrases and much longer text. So maybe you have like hundreds and hundreds of log lines that, you know, have error in it. God forbid, right? Hopefully you don't have hundreds of errors, but you might. And you want to start narrowing that down. So you could start searching for, maybe I'm looking for an error related to out of memory, let's just filter down to out of memory. So it starts filtering these words, and you can create these very advanced ways of modeling what you are looking for. Or sometimes there will be additional fields. A really great example of this is we store or a lot of, let's see, trying to find an example that I can do.
Actually, I would, David, if you want to go over to Discover, that might be easy because you have the sample of flight data, and we can just do like some quick filtering there.
Good call. By the way, _score here is a relevant score. So what OpenSearch does is it basically says, hey, I have this algorithm that actually isn't that bad. We can explain it. We will not explain it today, but it is an explainable algorithm that you can understand that it uses to calculate how relevant is this document to the query that you typed in. So I typed in dog existed. It calculates the relevance score, and the keen-eyed might note that it wasn't 100% because it could never be 100% certain, because maybe you said dog, but really you were looking for another word. Or maybe dog has different semantic meaning, which we're not going to get into. But here we go. So we've got our flight data here. Let's take a look at the source of this. Also, I really love this new UI, although I am not familiar with it. Is there a way to view this a little prettier? Boop, there we go. So this little inspect document details will show you all the different fields that exist. So here I can see destination contains the word Narita. So let me go ahead and search for all the flights that have Narita. Oh gosh. See, again, I don't do DQL. Let's do dest. Oh gosh, this is the part I was not prepared for today, and I think it shows.
I'll talk you through this a little bit. So one thing you could do when you go back to inspect, open that up. You can do quick filters from here. So actually, if you just click that plus magnifying next to one of those fields, it will filter down to all the document records that have that same desk Narita International Airport, right? So up above, you can see the filter is now filtering all those documents. You can kind of combine all this stuff. So the filtering makes it really easy to kind of like drill down. You can still do what David's doing, which is like general search. So like search for like airlines. I think this should work. Also, this is a brand new UI, so it's possible. Like just search for the word airlines. Yeah. Okay.
Hold on.
But basically what you put in this query up here is going to be translated into kind of the searches that David was showing in the dev tools. Also, you can change the time range, which is we'll also filter by like when those documents were created or whatever your timestamp field is. So this is, again, just for those of you that are going to be working more on the back end, this is sometimes a really useful tool to quickly actually just see what your documents are and what data they contain, as opposed to always having to write CLI or HTTP verb commands. You could just kind of do everything through a quick UI. So this is actually kind of why I would say this tool originally existed, was a quick way to kind of see what's in your documents, find the document you're looking for without having to kind of like type out all those commands from scratch every time.
Yeah. And someone just noticed as well that DevTools stored their history. DevTools actually, or history is stored for localhost, basically cached in your browser. So as long as you move from localhost to localhost, this will always live here, which is a little bit funny because I could go to playground.opensearch.org. And because I've visited Playground before, I can go to their DevTools, and here we can see all of the different things that I have done on Playgrounds recently. So it is per domain that you visit. So if you stay on localhost, it stays in localhost. It's interesting. Sometimes it's a little frustrating because I've found that I'm like, oh no, there's stuff here that I didn't want to be here. And again, we were just playing with the dashboards. I should have. Oh, let me go back to that. Where did the sample data go? Discover. Here we go. I can actually go here and see dashboards query language. And here we can go ahead and find information about how to query using dashboards query language. So here we go. We could do like keyword equals star. So maybe we want to find dest :NAR star. Hopefully this works. There we go. And even though I didn't write Narita out all the way, it's like, hey, anything that starts with NAR, show me that. We're the destination. So this is a really powerful interface. Again, as you guys saw from my interactions with it just now, not every person works on every area though. So you're not expected to be an expert in these, but yeah, just poke around, have fun, and ask us the questions, write documentation, please. If you find something that doesn't work the way you expect, please go update the documentation. Thank you all. What questions do people have? I know we're a little bit over. I'm sorry. Thank you for those who hung in there.
I did see one question in the chat that I want to address there. And that's if, let's say, I'm focused on developing on dashboards or a dashboards plugin, and I still need to run OpenSearch, like the backend, can I do so with Docker? And the answer is yes, you can. There are containers, there are images published for OpenSearch and OpenSearch dashboards, and those containers come with all of the plugins already bundled in.
Actually, that is a really good point. What I will do here, I will show that. There is a Docker Compose file that you can use to run OpenSearch. And here we'll pull up my Docker desktop. This is how I run OpenSearch for the most part. Here I have, this is the Docker development environment that Abby created earlier. And then this is a vector search instance. So here I'm running an example of what vector search looks like in OpenSearch. Oh, wow. Just pins my CPU right out of the gate. This is going to start up in OpenSearch backend and OpenSearch dashboards instance. And then at some point in time, they will both be up and I can use them locally. Let's do this.
While we're waiting for that, yeah, also just there, I think it's a really good question because depending on which repo you work on, let's say you're working on an OpenSearch Dashboards plugin. To run that locally, you will be running your plugin code locally, which will have a setup similar to what you saw today. That plugin code needs a running version of OpenSearch Dashboards, and that OpenSearch Dashboards needs a running version of OpenSearch. So depending on what repo you're working on, these setup instructions might be kind of optimized a little bit differently for however that stack should be set up. And so some folks may have a Docker-oriented workflow. In dashboards, for instance, usually there's a way to start the OpenSearch backend without having to clone and pull and do all the Java and Gradle setup. There's just a command that says yarn OpenSearch snapshot that will pull and run the latest OpenSearch backend. So depending on the repo you end up being matched with, these instructions may vary, but at least now you've seen how to pull from source and run both OpenSearch and OpenSearch dashboards, even if there are other shortcuts you may actually use in day-to-day development.
Exactly. Like here's kind of an example. My workflow doesn't involve cloning OpenSearch normally, cloning dashboards. I go and I run my OpenSearch vector search, which is just a file, a YAML file that can be run. Then I am creating just basically a demo end-to-end here in the UI of the DevTools. And this is just a really great way to build and test things without having to go through. And for example, this one is going to be building a, let's see, an ML index and using the neural search plugin and external ML models. So it'll do some remote inferencing. And this is a semantic search demo that was written in, wow, honestly, yeah, less than 200 lines, which is kind of cool. So, huzzah.
Yeah,
Any other questions? Yeah.
Well, in the meantime, I do have one just announcement and reminder too. There's that survey that should be completed by Sunday to help with the repo matching process for next week. We're going to be sending out a list with descriptions of each participating repository, so you can learn more about each repository in the program, and look at the pinned Slack messages in the Slack channel, where we'll primarily use to communicate announcements.
I will get this session out as early as I can. Unfortunately, recorded sessions, they are a challenge because they take a long time to produce and put up on YouTube. I will get it out as soon as I can, though. I'm still working on yesterday's one, though, for context. So we will get that to you as soon as we can, and it'll, yeah.
Yeah, and just a final announcement about deadlines. So the end of the day on the 24th is when we want to make sure you have your pull request open to the project website from the day 2 presentations yesterday. And so that's the main thing. And then that's also the deadline for filling out the repo matching survey that Craig just mentioned. So those are the 2 things. If you're still struggling with the setup that David went through today, that's okay. Let us know in Slack. We'll try and help you through it. For some of you, it may not matter even if you don't get it fully complete, because you will have different repo setup instructions. So what we did today, you'll do something similar, likely in whatever repo you get set up with, and that'll be kind of the first week to make sure you have a dev environment up and running in the repo you'll be working in.